All right. We're going to be looking at the assessment 3. Hopefully everyone can see that. All right, so assessment 3, of course it will start off with your project information, which is your brief again that the client originally gave you, and you saw from your client meeting that he hasn't added in anything or he hasn't changed anything. So that was a really good question he had to ask, is what did the client want to achieve with this? Because sometimes, as I said, in the interim of time, they speak to other people and they change their ideas. Okay? So that is why we repeat this part on every single assessment, so that you know what the client is on about. All right, this part here, workplace procedure for assessment 3. Don't worry too much about this, but you need to be aware of it in terms of taking a snapshot of how you are documenting your information, like where you're putting your assessments, etc. So this will actually be a requirement for assessment 4. Okay, so this just tells you how you can create your folders correctly to be able to take a screenshot of that.
Where is this information?
This is where, so for every unit you need to save your work, right?
No.
Yeah.
Where have you got this from on our side?
No, this is the assessment.
Oh, this is the assessment.
So it's on the assessment 3, all right? So if you want to know from the start, that's what it looks like, all right? So there it says assessment task title, assessment 3. So this is the document that you will fill in with your details, and then you add it to your, either as a separate document filled out for me so that I can provide feedback for you, or you can actually incorporate or insert your project into this. Now I have heard from students that this is difficult because the text is all set up in a certain way, so don't confuse yourself. Just send this document as a separate document to me attached with your assessment 3, okay? Because it becomes very frustrating when it takes time to work out a Word document and how to line up everything, okay? Sometimes I've wanted to throw my computer out the window, so I can totally understand. All right, so here is your requirements, okay? Assessment requirements. You are to complete this document in an A4 paper format. It must be seen as either a formal letter or a report. It must be between the words of 200 to 1,000 words. All right, so that's anything from 2 pages to 5. If you want more, I'm not stopping you. It could be with images, etc. So that can all be addressed. All right, so let's look here. Using the information you have gathered throughout your assessment 1A, which is, what was 1A? Your research. 1B, what was 1B? Your meeting with the client. And 2 is what you're going to submit soon, so that is with regards to some sustainable solutions and concepts, right? So that's what the client has no idea about, because that's what he told you or she told you in the meeting with the client, and therefore that's why we've asked you to kind of do that as research. You are to draft a letter. Why do you think it's drafting at this stage? Because exactly, because we are going to do the final letter, which is the final project or final assessment, and that will be your design brief as assessment 4. So the draft letter is approval to proceed with the finalization of the design brief, which is design brief is seen as assessment 4. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So approval to proceed, what does that mean, approval to proceed? Okay, approval to proceed means you've drafted this letter according to all this information you've gathered from your research, from meeting with the client, from providing some design solutions in terms of sustainability. Now you put it in a letter, and the client will go over that, and the client then will make some changes. And he'll say, oh, I'm not so sure about your fee. Or can we negotiate on your fee? Or, golly, I didn't realize that those materials might cost that much. Or, I didn't know that council might need that. So in that sense, you then say, no worries, I'll re-look that letter and I'll draft it so that we're both on the same page, and therefore we submit it as a final brief. Okay, do you see how the sequence works? And then that's when client is happy, you are happy, and client signs off on that brief, and then work actually starts to begin. All right. So these are the requirements to assist you to draft up that approval to proceed letter. There are 1 to 7 there, okay? And these are the requirements. You need to address the first one, which is the client's vision. Now remember, in communication topic, we talked about a mission and a vision. A vision is utopia. It's the ultimate that what the client wants to achieve with the project. So we could reiterate there his project brief to you, correct? So the client's vision in a shortened version is a summary of literally this part here. Look here, this project information. So client's vision is this. This is what he wants to achieve with the hotel, correct? But please don't do a copy or paste with this, because this is what happened last semester. A student decided just to copy and paste this whole part and put it in. No, it needs to be put into your own words. So I need a summary of this to say the client wants to do X, Y, and Z, and this will be achievable as we provided some design solutions or something like that. All right? I'm going to show you an example, so don't stress too much about that. All right, so that's the client's vision. All right? We don't know, I mean, the client doesn't know yet if that is going to be achieved, but we put it down as what he wants to eventually do with the hotel. That's the client's vision. The second point, or the second requirement, is your research and discoveries through analysis. So what do we think we do there? Where can we find that information? You've already achieved that to a certain degree. When we look at research, where does that word research link to? Yes, and that was part of assessment 1A. 1A. All right, so we can bring in some information there, saying to the client, the research we found was the zone, was the council that it fell under. We also found out discoveries that it wasn't, there were some compliant issues, so we can bring in that. All right. You can just mention 2 there. So what were the compliant issues that we found out? First one that comes to mind. Disability access. Well done, Jason. Another one. The exit signs. What's the other one? Car parking. Correct. Toilets. Yes. So toilets. So we can actually say, for the number of people that you have provided in the meeting with the clients, your toilet facilities are not sufficient. According to the codes, so you can look it up and say, for the number of people, X amount of toilets is required for females, and X amount of urinals and toilets are available for males. Okay?
We were talking about disabled toilets, and when I was looking up some information, it mentioned other unable bodies, so wheelchair as opposed to, so that's the one, ambulance.
Ambulance.
So when we do our toilet construction, you can't put a ambulance toilet with a disabled toilet. They were saying you can do it with a normal toilet, so you can make that larger. Is that right? So you can't have a disabled and an ambulance toilet as one.
Yeah, I know that some have got away with putting it in one, and then some have done two. So if you're wanting to do two, that's fine, as long as there is a disability toilet for disability for wheelchair access. All right.
As long as it's wide enough to do both.
Yeah, wide enough to do that. Yeah. So that's a good thing, a good point there. So think of those as potentially what you thought was really valid for your research that you found. That's point 2. What you think is important, you need to put in there, all right, from your research that you found that was really going to affect what the client actually wants to achieve as their vision. All right. Yes, Arena.
So I noticed on a plan, the measurement is not, for example, I don't know how many square meter got that building, because I can't see on that plan.
There is some.
Everything have to be accurate, or
Say again?
for example, on that plan, I can't see measurement at all, so I don't have idea actually. I can only guess how many square meter has that restaurant building, which is actually very important to accurately calculate occupants, because many of our clients' vision will not be possible if we calculate it correctly through the NCC and any other. We have to know how many square meters of the building.
Yeah. All right. So the question one of the students asked is, there are no. She's come across the plans and has seen that there is no measurements on those plans, and she's wanting to say that that really affects then identifying the cost. Is this a concern? So with that, there is a plan with the bathroom facilities. They've provided you measurements there, and I'll go to that plan now. So let me just close this quickly, and I'll show you which one you need to look at for that. Understanding a brief. There's some measurements there.
But you can't read.
8.5 to 8. And then along here, because this is basically what if someone's gone to site and taken those measurements. So with this here, you can actually look down here. Yeah, so there's a room there, seven. Sorry, this line's in the way, but that's about 7 meters by 4.4. So you don't have to exactly get that measurement, but you can get an area span of that room. The next one is, for instance, this area here is 5.24 across, and you can get an idea there. But at this stage of this process, we're not actually defining yet. This is where we would actually send ourselves back and take final measurements and then get the QS to kind of work out that pricing. We can provide now for documentation stage what materials we would think of using and things like that, and would propose that to the client and then propose it to the QS. He would come up with the costing, and then from there, then it's either the client in the final briefs or in this proposal saying, no, I think that's a bit too costly, coming back to doing, changing the materials, etc. So at this part, we're just suggesting, all right? It's conceptual, if I can put it that way. I know that comes a bit it does make it a little bit difficult, but you've got some idea there in terms of, and you can also take an aerial shot of the whole area and work out from there potentially of a square meter. Or you could just actually say, per square meter, I'm working at 3,000 for the materials to be used. And then you could work out a rough idea from there. Okay, all right. But that's not essential at this stage, okay? With other units that you're doing, yes, it is, but at this stage, no. All right, I think this one here has the bathroom measurements on. No.
No, I looked as well. There's nowhere we can measure materials.
there.
Oh, in the
There's the toilets that you can work with in terms of sizing. Okay. All right, so we're all happy with that? Just to show you where you can locate some stuff. Okay, let's go back. All right, so possible design solutions including materials and sustainable elements from assessment 2. So you can actually see we're actually incorporating all our assessments that we've previously done. So question 3, or not question 3, requirement 3 is saying what are possible design solutions? What are possible materials or sustainability elements that we can incorporate into this hotel? And that is the information that you've accumulated from your assessment that you're doing now, which is assessment 2 on sustainability. If there's a specific design solution that you want to incorporate that might not be sustainable, please don't limit yourself to only making it sustainable. You can suggest that too. Okay. So it's actually looking at resolving what the client's vision is. It's providing those design solutions. And that's where you can actually bring in your drawings and hand sketches you've provided, or your beautiful images you've provided. You guys made some wonderful references to some interior shots to create a mood or relating to like an industrial feel by incorporating the heritage elements with the modern or conceptual ideas. And then outside you decided that the outside area would be completely seen as different from the interior. So you made it like a glass box. Some of you suggested that, adding glass, but then looking at glass being sustainable, of course. Okay? So is it double glazed? Is it going to allow too much heat in? Think of passive design as well. How are you going to orientate maybe the new part of the adding onto the building with using maybe some natural landscaping where the leaves can dry up in the winter and they can flourish in the summer, bringing the coolness. Exactly. So you've got that lovely sea breeze coming from the harbour side, and I think that's from the north, the side actually. So think of how that will work. The setting of the sun from the west, how much harsh sun is coming through at that time. So you can work with all of that. All right. So 3 relates mostly to potentially your design solutions as well as sustainability for assessment 2. 4, budget constraints. Now, people always put just 900,000. I'm looking at the constraint on the budget, guys. Okay? What would be a constraint on the budget? So what would be a problem to the budget?
time.
Yes.
Cost.
Time and quality.
A triangle.
Exactly. So the triangle. Okay, so we're looking at the client wanted the time to be 18 months, correct? To do all of this. But he still wants his hotel to be open, correct? That's going to play a part on your budgets. Are you going to be able to phase it correctly or stage it correctly? Another thing is the quality. Now that you are suggesting these materials, will that play a part on the budget? Yeah, you're right, Scott, it will. Because we might choose materials that are sustainable, that come at a higher cost than normal materials, and that could play a part on affecting the budget. Would consultants be potentially a constraint on the budget?
Yeah, they might not be able to get there.
Well, they also might be too expensive for the client to pay outside the budget, and then we've got a problem because they're not included in the budget. So you've also got to think of that. All right. So when I talk about a constraint, it's almost seen as a effect or a problem that is not seen as it's seen as a problem to the budget. So just like the the restraint or a compliance issue with regards to the Cumberland Hotel, it's seen as a negative aspect. All right. So if you don't understand that word constraint, it's seen as it's constraining someone. It's like strangling something.
So
Okay.
the problem
Yeah.
that may occur that might hold up construction or hold up the project, basically.
Yeah. So it's basically seen as something that could potentially hold up a project. Yeah. Exactly. All right, so any additional consultants that may be required for the roof and existing trees, well, that's a given. Okay, that's easy peasy done. We've decided that, we know that in terms of the consultants being identified there. All right, and then the approval to proceed method. The approval to proceed method, I'll discuss that in next week's class, but basically that's the signing off of the document. You know how you get a contract to sign for your phone, if you get a new phone, and then they say, please sign here, okay? That's the approval to proceed method. It's the part where they make you put your name, your surname, and your signature, and with a date, all right? It's something like this that says, I approve that all of this is correct, and I'm happy to proceed. Or the client might sign it and say, I'm happy to proceed, but I have questions, or I am not happy with point 1, point 2, or point 3, point 4. Please can we have a meeting to discuss this further? All right. And that's usually what happens at this stage. And also someone referred to this as almost like a building contract. They'll have a draft building contract, and then they have a final building contract. And the draft building contract is where the client analyzes everything, and then he might have a discrepancy on something, and then there's a meeting, or he comes back and says, can we relook that point? And then you actually come to an agreement, and then you do the final brief. All right. So there's just different words being used for different topics, or different, sorry, not topics, different documents. But we are keeping it simple to say this is approval to proceed letter. So it's a draft of the final brief. Okay. Remember, this is a way of recapping and making sure the final brief will include all the necessary information without having to change the level of service and associate fees. All right, and the last point, which you actually kindly showed me in your meeting with the clients, some of you had already designed a logo, but you need to design a company logo. All right, now it doesn't mean I want to see graphic design, amazing artwork. No. I just could need maybe your initials and the name of your company, or it could be an emblem or a symbol. I just need something on your document, and you'll see how simple these other students have done that with the examples I'll provide with you now. All right, and then this is what I'll fill in for you. And you've seen this previously completed. I'll say satisfactory. If it's not satisfactory, I write over here, and then you need to readdress some points that you've missed out. If it's satisfactory, I give you feedback over here. Okay, all right. And then please fill in your student name here, and I will then, you don't have to sign it, I sign it all down here. Okay, perfect. So that is assessment 3. All right, now we're going to look quickly at an example. All right, so these examples are a bit old, but and you might have seen them in other units, but we're just reiterating that how we can actually incorporate this unit into other units. So if you have seen this before, just bear with me, because there's some information in there that you can actually extract. I'm not saying copy this exactly the same, all right? So let's go to this one here. Oh, I jumped, sorry. This is example, where am I? Assessed example 3 there. All right, so there, they've done green frog concepts. So he's got a little froggy there to represent a green frog concepts. Very important, he's given me his information of where I can actually get hold of him. He's given me that he's got an address. You can make it up. Someone said they used the Hobbit's address in Lord of the Rings, so they made it up in that sense, so that was quite fun. There was some humor there. But you don't have to give your physical address if you don't want to, but if you want to, that's fine. I'm not going to use that information. It's just so that I can see something's there. And what they've done here, they've actually provided a little introduction there, just saying that this is the person who's the client, and this is where the project is. And then via signing, return this document to Green for a concept. So they haven't done an introduction letter here. They've just done it very simply here. Then they've addressed what the client's vision is by providing some design solutions in here. So that is what they're going to tackle as design solutions. So this could help you here. Now, please, I know this was copied in some students, because why? This is the Adelaide Hills Council, okay? And they put in fire ratings and addressed that. Now, where Port Adelaide Enfield is, there is no fire rating, okay? It's seen as, it doesn't have a fire rating, okay? So please, I know when something's been copied and when something's not been copied. So I'm just warning you, if I see anything referred to a BAL, and I am quite familiar with all the fire rated areas or BAL areas. So don't put anything in there and think you can pull the wool over my eyes, all right? So just be aware, very aware of that. And then they brought in consultation with various organizations and bodies. So there's a CFS for bushfire assessment, all right? So please don't use that, because I'll know. So this part with meeting with consultations, well, we've got it with one of our requirements there, like a roof plumber, an arborist, electrician, a quantity surveyor, etc. Okay? And then what you can do, and this is not a must, but this you can, it's actually a must for assessment 4, so you don't have to bring this in at all in this stage, which this person has. They've brought in that there's certain details and drawings required by that council and CFS, so that's to do with fire ratings, for planning approval. So where did they get this information? They went into the council and they got what is required for planning approval, and they put it down. So when it comes to assessment 4, this is where you can look at Port Adelaide Enfield Council, and you can actually see what is needed there for approval to proceed, planning approval, okay? And then the drawings required for that. You get all that information from them. And then there's a repeat with regards to building approval. So the students has actually put this all in to this document with planning approval and building approval, because it's the document. And then they've decided to tell the client the process of once signing, what will happen. So this is ticking now the boxes, and this is what Kieran, you said, can the client actually be tell at what stage can the client tell the designer what stage to be pulled in or released? Then this is where the client can actually tick the box and say so. But you actually don't need this, because we have agreed in the meeting with the client that it's up to documentation stage. Okay. This is the part that will appeal to you, because it's to do with the fee structure. Okay. So how do we determine our fee structure, and how would you come up with your percentage? You can do anything from 3% up to 15%. I would say that a good medium would be around about the 5% to maybe 7% mark for this project. So that's how you can determine your fee for this. Some people told me, they were outright and they said, I think that it's worth more, or they said, I think it's worth less. And they gave reasons why, okay, over here. So this percentage was determined by various factors. So this is where they came up with their percentage fee. So this student came up with an 8% fee of I think it was 800,000 for this project. This percentage was determined by various factors, including the blending of old and new structures, heritage considerations, additional work due to fire zone, okay, quality of work to be carried out. So what would you put in there? We actually discussed it in this previous, where we discussed it in the topic earlier.
The roof plumbing.
Yeah. What could affect the cost of a project? It could be time again. It could be the quality of the people that you're using. It could also be, if you go to the first page of the slideshow, remember I had the RAL picture of the Royal Adelaide Hospital, and I looked at there what could actually affect the cost. It could be the people involved, it could be the distance, it could be the location, it could be a number of factors there. So you need to make that up and put that in there, what affects your cost, and you need to back it up why you think it is an 8% or a 5% or a 3%. You could also bring in that you getting a highly qualified, well-renowned quantity surveyor, and that's affecting your fee. Okay, because you're actually going to be covering that cost. Okay. So that just gives you a bit of an indication here. And then this client has actually said that the total estimate fee will be $18,500. So that 8% is 8% of what this budget is. And he's worked it out to be, she's worked it out to be $18,500 excluding GST. Okay, because it's a budget. It's not finalized. It's excluding GST. We haven't added GST on it. Okay? And then what they've done is they've broken it up into payments. And this is usually what happens with a project. They have to start the project, when the client finally signs that brief, what happens is that the initial or the deposit gets asked for. Okay? So when we're looking at payment 1, all right, they've said approval to proceed. That could be on signing the brief, okay? And the next payment could be seen as a progress payment or paid on planning approval. Or payment 3 could be seen as final payment or paid on building approval. You don't have to just mention those 3. You could actually stage it into much more options. But this is what this student has provided here. In business, where I work at the moment, they also have 3 payments. They've got the deposit, they've got a progress payment that the client pays, and then once the project is finished, there's a final payment. Okay. But because we are only dealing up to submitting to council, that's their way of describing that. Okay, now these are available for you to access on your under your assessment 3. Okay. To discuss why GST is not in, so they've given you, they've also given you exclusions, terms and conditions at the bottom here by saying GST is not included, consultant fees are not included. Fees do not include further levels of service, but service and fees can be undertaken at negotiable rate. What does that mean? That means that if the client decides to go on with the project and decides to ask you to help further with, just say, tendering, etc., then there's a new contract that gets developed there. It's not saying that we only just go up to documentation stage. Some people say that they also offer an interior design service, they offer engineering, etc. So then the client is aware that, oh, okay, I've taken a bit too much on. I need you back to help me. Okay. They've also said additional consultative work required will be charged out at $55 an hour. So in other words, that's that rate, that hourly rate coming back to check on the project.